Life is cheap in the lands of Barovia, but death is an entirely different subject. In today's video, we're going to be talking about life, but most important of all, death in the lands of Barovia, and things we can do to go ahead and spice things up. Of course, there's going to be a ton of spoilers, so players don't watch this. So death is something that happens in a lot of D&D adventures. Not all of them, mind you. It really comes down to the kind of DM that you are. Do you have death prevalent in your campaigns, or do you have it just simply there waiting on the table, waiting for your players to go ahead and do something stupid to pick it up? That entirely depends on you, of course. But you see, the thing is, in the normal D&D games, if a PC were to die, there's usually an easy way to bring them back, with simple spells such as Revivify, or Raise Dead, or some Divine Intervention, whatever the case may be. Ravenloft, and specifically Curse of Strahd here in the lands of Barovia, that typically doesn't happen. Most DMs don't allow there to be diamonds in the land because, no one's mining diamonds. How the heck would there be diamonds here? You could, of course, rule that the Vistani bring in diamonds to these lands and your players could go ahead and buy them. But then, of course, you have to work out how much they cost and all that. And that's a little bit finicky because it needs to be diamonds worth X amount. But, of course, the prices are inflated, so you're definitely going to have to do some finagling with that. Me personally, I don't allow diamonds to be in the lands of Barovia. I just don't think they fit. I don't think that the Barovian people would ever have a need for diamonds because they're impractical. Most people wouldn't be that flashy or gaudy. And also importantly is the only person that would really have these diamonds are incredibly rich and powerful people, such as the burgomasters or maybe even Strahd himself. But once again, those diamonds would be under lock and key or maybe even worn by these people. So let's say you're running a game that involves death, but you don't have the inclination to bring in diamonds. What do you go ahead and do about that? Well, in the module, we get several instances on how that can go ahead and be fixed, such as the Abbot casting Raise Dead 3 times for the party. So if a PC dies, then the party can go ahead and bring that body all the way up to the Abbey, and the Abbot can go ahead and perform a nice little Raise Dead. But as we can see here in this chart, the alterations to magic, anybody that dies for a whopping 24 hours and is brought back to life, then suffers an indefinite madness. That is some pretty gnarly stuff. If a PC dies very far away from the Abbey and your players have no quick way to get there, then as soon as they're brought back to life, then unfortunately for them, they are in for a terrible time because they're going to have some lingering side effect which may alter how they are played, which of course can be fun, but not everyone enjoys that. Definitely keep that to your DM's discretion. But let's say that you don't want to add diamonds to your campaign, and your players also haven't met up with the Abbot yet. How would we go about resurrecting people, especially if they are lower level, because of course lower levels are pretty scary. If you are running Death House, specifically running Death House for levels 1 or 2 players, if you're running it as written, people are going to die. That's inevitable. So how do we handle that? How do we handle PCs dying so frequently, so regularly, and so quickly? Well, thankfully, the Adventurers League content gave us an amazing Dark Gifts table. For those of you unfamiliar, Adventurers League content is content that's paired side by side along the modules that releases over time and adds to the world. A perfect example being the Curse of Strahd content. The Adventurers League content that is paired alongside Curse of Strahd is actually great. It goes into great detail about a town located up north that is cold and miserable and resides just outside of the normal scope of the book. So if you wanted to go ahead and take a look at that, I would strongly suggest doing so because there's a lot of fun little adventures going around that village of Orsnow. But the thing that we're going to be looking at today, of course, is the expanded Dark Gifts table. Now, what is this? Well, you see, if you have a party that's levels 1, 2, 3, or 4, then something amazing happens. When they die, they can go ahead and choose to come back to life. However, coming back to life for free is not a thing. Everything always comes at a cost. So for the purposes of the Adventures League content here, we get several options. The first being when a character under 5th level dies, the dead character can be brought back to life by an ally, or be paid to be revivified by Jenny Greenteeth, who is a character that your players can interact with during the story. However, the second option, the one that we're going to be diving into today, is the player can choose to have the dark powers of Ravenloft resurrect the character for free. If the player chooses this resurrection, the character returns to play at the next round with full hit points and spells. However, the dark resurrection leaves the characters tainted by shadow. For this, you simply ask that they roll a d20, and on the next turn, they come back to life. They spring back from death. However, whatever they rolled is maybe going to go ahead and show to the other people around, although some of them may not. We're going to be looking at some of these to go ahead and showcase that off. The first being, the character's eyes melt away, leaving empty eye sockets. They have a disadvantage on persuasion checks, but gain blind sight out to a range of 60 feet. The character is blind beyond this point. That is a fascinating one. That means you are incredibly well gifted in sight within a whole 60 diameter range. However, anything beyond that is just a curtain. It's a wall of black. It's nothing that you can see behind, which means that everything within sight, perfectly great, but anything beyond is terrible. And that has a lot of implications. Something can happen just outside of range that everyone else in the party would be able to see, but you couldn't. So you have to sit there and actually truly think about what your player can and cannot interact with. Another big one here is number 4. At night, the character can spend 1 hit die to move through solid objects as though they were difficult terrain. A character who ends their turn inside of an object takes 1d10 force damage. The character counts as an undead creature for the purposes of spells and effects such as Turn Undead. This is a very big one. If you have a group that has a cleric or a paladin or something else that wants to turn the undead, then this is going to affect them invariably. Especially if they are the one trying to turn, the undead, because they might turn themselves, which would be hilarious. This has huge ramifications. If you are going up against a horde of zombies and the cleric turns the undead, then lo and behold, they may be turned as well and start running away in constant fear. But that is fascinating. During the night, however, they have a big advantage. They could theoretically escape through somewhere at the low cost of only 1 of their hit die. But that is fun. Number 14, the character's feet change to resemble a giant ape. Due to the change, the character is unable to wear footwear. The character's speed is reduced by 10 feet, but they now ignore difficult terrain while their feet are bare. Once again, a very big deal. If you have magical boots in the party, they're not going to be able to wear them, right? Simple as that. That's kind of a big deal. Not that Curse of Strahd natively has any magical footwear, but if you add it yourself, then that person's not going to be able to wear it. Another thing important is, of course, the fact that if their speed is reduced by 10 feet, they're going to be slowing down the group. If they are traditionally 30 feet, now going down to 20 feet, the party has to slow down for them. But at the same time, if everyone's normally 30 feet, then in difficult terrain, they're only 15 feet, meaning that this person can actually move a little bit faster. Very unique. So you can see that between all of these things, they each provide something good. They each have something mechanical that gives you an advantage. But all of these, of course, come with both a mechanical and a roleplay detriment, which I think is perfectly fine, fun, and fair. This is a fun little list to run. If you don't have too much death going on, then you're never going to get duplicates, and you wouldn't want duplicates anyway. If anybody rolled the same thing, you would just go ahead and ask them to roll another d20. So as long as you don't have 20 dead PCs on your hands in the span of a single campaign, which you probably shouldn't, then this is going to work out perfectly fine. Now those dark gifts allow you to run a bit more of a deadly campaign, especially if you are running Death House. They allow you to go ahead and not hold back, but also give your players a chance to continue on in the campaign. But something I want to discuss was, how do we go about bringing these people back? In there, we just basically get the information that, oh, you can just ask them straight up if you want to come back to life or not, and then they get that detriment. But I think that is a little bit, gamey. I personally would like to add a little bit of flair to that. Whenever a PC dies, I always go ahead and take that person out individually and have a one-on-one talk with them. I describe to them that while they go ahead and embrace death and they feel their soul drifting away from their body, they would know that their soul would drift off to whatever afterlife that they have pledged themselves to, except that their soul lingers. Their soul doesn't linger in the location, though. Their soul seems to find itself in the abyss. They find themselves in a sea of darkness. All around them, a tide, an endless wave of darkness that they cannot escape from. In this darkness, they cannot see, they cannot hear, they cannot feel, they cannot touch, they cannot taste. But they know that they are lost in this endless horizon. I described to them how they feel as if they are meandering and wandering about, constantly moving forward, but not knowing which way they are truly heading to. Constantly moving, constantly going, until eventually, after such a tremendously long amount of time, they finally see something that stands out. An object, a person, an idea, a belief. You can go ahead and tailor that to your own desires. This manifestation that appears in front of them is a dark power. But which dark power is it? Well, that's something I would go ahead and start taking a look into over in the Amber Temple. In the Amber Temple, we get a lot of information about these deities, these ideas, these manifestations, these whatever they are, these dark powers. We get some information about their names and kind of what their whole deal is. So I would go ahead and start drawing some inspiration from all of these. And perhaps you go ahead and tailor it to each individual person, or you just go ahead and say that it's a complete hodgepodge and every single time it's just completely random. When these manifestations appear in front of the PC's soul for the first time, they will be curious. They know that they are forever lost in this darkness, but they see one thing that just stands out. And one of the best ways I described it was, in the sea of darkness, they see a red velvet curtain, standing in front of which is a robed figure. This robed figure doesn't appear to be any person that they know, and it's not any deity that they know. It is one of these dark powers. It is one of the vestiges, and this dark power is going to go ahead and extend a hand to that PC's soul. Your player is naturally going to be curious. They're going to be asking questions. They're going to try and get the rub in. They're going to try and figure out what's going on. But don't allow any of their abilities to work because they are not in their body. They're in their soul. So they don't have access to spells or special features or anything of that regard. The only thing they have is whatever they have to say. And the dark power that's manifested in front of them isn't going to go ahead and talk willy-nilly. They're going to say just a few lines and entice them into a deal. Do you accept this gift? What is this gift? Well, it is the gift of life, but of course it's also one of the other gifts that comes alongside. Whether that be them losing their eyes, or getting a wolf snout, or having their lungs filled with smoke. It's any one of those numerous things. But that, to them, to these dark powers, is a gift. It is the gift of life, and each one of those do provide some benefit, so they see it as a gift. But the dark powers are not going to reveal what that is. They are not going to give away all of the necessities. They're simply going to extend out a hand and say, do you accept this gift of life? Yes or no? If your player refuses the dark powers, then their soul is forever lost and roll up a new character. But if they truly want their character to live, they will accept this gift, and they will be sprung back to life, and they'll look around, and of course they'll be brought back to completely full health even though they just died. But of course they're also going to bring back with them some dark power that now resides in their body. I promise you, if you have a player that really wants their character to live, they're going to accept this deal. And of course, they're not going to know what's up the first time. But here's the real kicker. Once that first player comes back to life, then they're going to see the ramifications, more than likely. There is some of these dark gifts that actually don't show, and they may be able to truly hide it. But majority of these, your rest of the group is going to be able to see that, oh, something's up. But that's something you got to play into. It's the fact that if you have a group that wants their characters to live, and they die, then they're going to be willing to accept some small caveat. Mind you, these aren't actually all that bad, but your players may have some mixed feelings about them. So once that first PC dies, they may or may not go ahead and tell their experiences about what happened when they died and came back to life. And they may go ahead and divulge all that information that they know about their dark power. They may know that they, of course, have now clammy skin. They may reveal that, oh yeah, I've got snot dribbling out of my nose. Oh, I've got an extra face on the back of my head. You know, they may go ahead and reveal these things, and that could go ahead and give a large driver to not dying, any more so than usual. because more often than not, people don't want to die. I always hate it when players say, oh yeah, I try and kill my character, because actual characters wouldn't want to die. It doesn't make any sense. So using these dark powers in your campaign can always be a blast. Of course, the Adventures League stuff here says that you should only run it between levels 1 through 4, because, of course, it is so easy to die in those early levels. Once again, especially if you're running Death House. But you can go ahead and extend this out however long you desire. You could go ahead and say that this lasts for the entirety of the campaign up until the grand finale. You could go ahead and say that it's not the dark powers that are giving your players these resurrections. Maybe it's Strahd himself. Maybe it's the abbot in disguise. Who knows? There is a lot of fun things you can do with death in Barovia. And mind you, death should not be the end of a campaign. It should not be the end of a character. Not in these lands. There's a lot more fun things you can do. So if you want to go ahead and not ease up off of the gas, go ahead and run a semi-deadly campaign. Run a campaign where if your players mess up, make bad decisions, and roll bad, they die. But hey, they have this little caveat. They can go ahead and come back to life. They may come out looking a little bit worse than normal, but hey, they can at least come back to life. So go ahead and tell me, do you have your players be brought back to life in the lands of Barovia? Or maybe you go ahead and say that death is just the end, and that's that. That'll go ahead and really press in that if you die here, your soul is trapped in the lands of Barovia, and that is going to really put a driver on everyone else to go ahead and put a stop to the Curse of Strahd. Maybe you go ahead and say that you can go ahead and come back to life as much as you want until there's no more dark gifts to be given out, and then that's when it starts capping off. Maybe you go ahead and make your own dark gifts, or you go ahead and search up for even more dark gifts. There's plenty out there, I promise you. So go ahead and feel free to do whatever you desire. That is going to do it for me for this video. Thank you so much for watching, and thank you to all my amazing patrons up here. You guys are absolutely awesome. Thank you so very much. That is going to do it for me. Thank you so much for listening, and I cannot wait to see you all in the next one.